Okay, everyone. It is just about 2 o'clock now, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We'd like to welcome all of you to our webinar this afternoon on ransomware protection and recovery. Today is World Backup Day, so we thought that the topic and the timing was great for this particular webinar. And just a few housekeeping items before we get started today. If you have any questions or would like to reach out to us during the presentation, most of us will be on mute. However, you can send your questions through the questions pane on your toolbar, or you can use the chat window and we will get back to you that way. We'll also save some time at the end of the presentation for Q&A if you'd like to ask some questions following today's presentation. And it's my pleasure today to welcome two experts. We've got Mr. Matt Mendonza, who's a senior product manager from Carbonite. And for those of you who don't know Carbonite, we are a data protection solutions company for both small and mid-sized businesses, founded in 2005, having gone public in 2011, with over 80,000 plus SMB customers and 8,000 plus partners, and located in the Boston, Massachusetts area with offices all around the US, Canada, and Europe. We've got about 150 plus petabytes of data under our protection, with 6 billion files backed up and counting, and over 10,000 folks who we've been able to assist and help with ransomware protection and recovery. And we've also, joining us today, we have Mr. Larry Walsh, who is the Senior Analyst and CEO of the 2112 Group. He is an expert in all things data backup, and without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Larry Walsh.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this auspicious World Backup Day. As Ethan said, I'm Larry Walsh of the 2112 Group. We are a business strategy firm, and we work with technology companies on improving their communications, their go-to-market strategies, and their partner and customer relationships. And we've been working with Carbonite on identifying and defining how they work with you in protecting your data from ransomware. I want to spend a couple of minutes here to talk about, what it is that Carbonite does for you, as well as why this is all important. And you see, the thing about Carbonite is that it is persistently and consistently backing up your files, and if you're using servers, it has the ability to back up your images as well. And this is critically important because it's not just about ransomware. This is about business continuity and ongoing business operations. When we look at the trends, when we look at the data, the impact of any data disruption or any type of outage, anything that causes a loss in data access, it has a tremendous impact on business productivity, business revenue, and ultimately viability. One of the things that is truly amazing is, and it still happens even after years of talking about the need for solid recovery programs and business continuity, not just systems but procedures and policies. That when you do see businesses that report catastrophic data corruption or losses, and they're unable to recover their files, either in mass or even on individual machines, you see a fair number of them that simply cannot recover their businesses and go out. So the entire point of working with a company like Carbonite for organizations like yours is to ensure that your data is backed up and protected on endpoints and servers, that you have that persistent confidence that somewhere in the cloud, in the Carbonite cloud, you have copies that you can recover on a recovery time objective or a recovery point objective, and that you're able to do this both in a cloud or also a hybrid solution. And this is what we're here to talk about today, is relating all this back to, and Matt is going to talk to you about this in a little bit, about how Carbonite's E2, eVault E2 appliance helps you with your on-premises storage as well as your backup and recovery solutions. So when it comes to ransomware, the way I want to describe this for you is that Carbonite is not the first line of defense. And this is the thing that's really important, is that Carbonite is the safety net. Carbonite is the thing that it will be there if all else fails. And if you haven't heard this term before, and I apologize to those that have heard it, is about this concept of defense in depth. Is when it comes to threat management or risk management and applying security technology to guard against all kinds of different threats, not just ransomware, you want to have synergistic control, layers of technology that are designed to detect, intercept, react, and restore in the event of any type of attack or compromise. There is no one silver bullet in the technology space, and despite what some people will tell you or some companies will tell you, there is no one technology that will solve all of your security woes, that will safeguard you against the myriad threats that are poised against your businesses. So you need to have multiple and layers of security in order to mitigate or minimize the chance of having a breach. And the thing to really remember is that the answer, whenever anybody asks, are we secure, the answer is always no. But you can be managed and you can minimize your risk exposure. And, typically, and I hate to say it like this, but, the breaches are something that happens. It's like you're going to have them. It's like getting the cold. Every now and then you're going to get a sniffle and you're going to feel run down. Security breaches are like that, and it's about the severity of the breach and how well you recover from it. And when that happens, that's why you have Carbonite, particularly when it comes to ransomware, because you want to have the confidence of being able to pull up your files and have access to working, accessible files in the event that ransomware does hit. Now, let's take a minute now to talk about what ransomware is. It is truly an epidemic. Ransomware it's not new, and I've been working security technology and threat intelligence for a better part of the last 20 years. And back when we were just beginning to talk about cloud computing, we started talking about the possibility or the theory behind something that would end up looking like ransomware. And what ransomware is that it's a malware attack or a virus that infects your systems, whether it's an endpoint or a server, and will use your network shares to encrypt all the files on an endpoint and then go on to encrypt all the files on attached devices, whether they're servers or other endpoints, through network shares. And the idea behind it is that not to destroy the files, or it is to disrupt you and make those files visible but not accessible. So what happens is that you're not able to use them until you pay the ransom, hence the name. Today criminals are using about 50 different forms of ransomware, and all they want from you is money. And this is one of the things, is that it's the ransomware attacks is something that is increasing exponentially. In fact, the forecast for 2017 is that ransomware attacks are going to be either the second or the first most common form of attack on the internet. And so you're going to be dealing with this one way or another, if not today, in the near future. In fact, a recent study shows that 84% of all small and mid-sized businesses will not meet ransomware demands because they simply cannot respond to them, meaning that they are going to sit there and they will not have the ability to pay, or the confidence that if they pay, they'll be able to restore their files. In fact, this is one of the real dangers, is that even if you pay the ransom, you are signaling a willingness to cooperate, a willingness to capitulate, which means is that you will continue to be a target for future attacks. So how does this work? Well, this is spear phishing. A hacker will send an email with a ransomware payload that will go to a user, and it can be either a spamming attack or a phishing attack or a spear phishing attack, where they are targeting, or it's a masked email, and the user will open up the payload, whether it's a malicious link or a malicious attachment. That will unpack the payload and launch the attack. The virus will then go on to the endpoint hard drive, encrypt all the files, it can find, and then move on to network shares to encrypt other files on connected systems. Those files will remain encrypted until you pay the ransom demand. So what happens is the ransomware will phone home, send a signal to the attackers, to the control point. The control point says, here is the identity of a victim. Now send a message. You are given instructions on how much and where to pay, and whether or not you pay will determine whether you will get your files unlocked or whether you will lose access to them forever. Now, some people may say that, we can go through and brute force, because it is a password protected encryption, whether you can brute force the private key or the public key, then, good luck, because most times that's not really possible. It's still quite difficult to brute force attack a 128-bit key. And most of the ransomware today is using 256-bit keys. So it's going to take quite a long time for you to get if you're trying to just do it on your own, to recover those files. There are two, even though we said there are 50 different forms of ransomware, there's two basic types. There's lock screen, which means is that you are not allowed to actually access or look at the files. It just basically prevents you from using your file system. Or the encryption, which is what is the more prevalent form, the more preferred form, because it is far more invasive and it's far more effective for the attacker to go in and attack those files. Now, even though there's 50 different forms, there's still just a handful of the more common type. There's Locky, the most common form is CryptoLocker or Crisis or PowerWare. It doesn't really matter. They all basically do the same thing. It's how they get in that really is it's how they get in and what they do once they're in there. And the hackers are getting quite creative, and because a lot of us are conditioned to be somewhat suspicious of that email from our uncle in Nigeria, or weary of getting an attachment of some invoice from Russia that when we don't do any business in Russia. So more recently, the attackers have been disguising the malware with different forms to entice specific users. So recently, you may have read is that there was actually a Star Wars themed ransomware, which was, I hate to say it, if a Star Wars file came across in an email to me, being a good lifelong Trekkie, I'd probably open it. In fact, many Trekkies were very upset to see that their file attachments were in fact ransomware, and they had to respond to it. God, I hope a few people are laughing over that. So what does this actually do to you? Well, we've calculated this for you. We've compiled a bunch of these numbers. It really is quite astounding. Is that last year, ransomware cost businesses $109 million in the first quarter. So extrapolate that out over the course of the year with an increasing volume of ransomware on a monthly basis. We're probably looking at, with the final tally for 2016 being somewhere between $1 billion and $1.2 billion. That may not sound significant when you consider the total loss to cyber attacks worldwide. And that's the misleading part of this, is that the reason why ransomware is so disruptive isn't so much the cost of it, because this represents the direct cost of paying them off. It is the lost opportunity. How long can you go without access to these files? And that number gets much higher. If you look at the average cost of recovery of it, if you don't have the proper protections, the ability to recover, it's about $300,000 per incident. And this is where it gets really interesting, is that we're not talking about huge sums of money that are being thrown out as demands. It's really somewhere around, under $1,000. And they make it very easy to PayPal this stuff, because they want you to pay. They don't want to make it a hard choice for you. This isn't the crime drama on TV where the kidnapper is demanding $20 million and you have to get a bank to open up over the weekend. This is something that you can handle fairly easy. Then try to make it a no-brainer to just pay them off and make them go away. And of course, the thing that is really the most common attack vector is spam. So it's always, even though we've done a tremendous job of squelching spam coming into our inboxes, there's still a fair amount that gets through. And if you're like me, you're checking your spam box, your spam folder a couple of times a day just to make sure a real email didn't get through. So there's always a potential of an errant click. 74% of all U.S. businesses were hit with ransomware in the last 12 months. Now, whether or not they were infected or had adverse effects is different, but this number is increasing. You should have a ransomware defense strategy, and so this is not, it's not just, as I was saying earlier, you need to have synergistic controls, you have to have layer of security defenses. It really isn't just about defense. It's not about the technology. It's about the things, about knowing what to do and how to do it. It's about setting up the proper controls. So the first thing we recommend is that you asset your inventory and you do data classification. Not all files are created equally. Not all information has the same value. So it's really important to understand not just what data you have or what files you have, but where they reside and assigning values to them so you can prioritize recovery. Now, this isn't necessarily about protecting, because if you do get a ransomware infection, it's still going to propagate across all your shares. What this is about is prioritizing what do you get first. How do you get the information most critical back first so that your business can resume operations. You should have anti-malware protection on all your endpoints, and yes, there's always going to be that debate about how effective the antivirus is. In fact, just earlier today I was reading about antivirus applications losing their luster. I would agree that the effectiveness of these applications does have it varies, but would not want to go out. Would not want to go out on the internet without them. So even if you have questions about the effectiveness, they are providing a measure of protection, which helps minimize, contributes to that mitigation. You also should have more advanced protections, sandboxing technologies, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention systems, security technologies and applications that can detect and react, or at least set off the alarm that tells you that there is something malicious happening or there's suspicious activity. Whitelisting applications also help, because if you do get an errant download or a drive-by download that's trying to execute, that your endpoints are configured so that they are only going to allow known applications allowed by policy. We also think that although it's not going to be an active defense, vulnerability scanners and vulnerability assessments are a vital part of this process, because they help you identify vulnerabilities or holes in the network fabric that can be exploited by malware and other ransomware. In fact, this is something else that's happening, is that malware, self-propagating malware, is being used by ransomwares to propagate. And also the catch-all, which is security awareness training. It really is important to continually reinforce the importance of vigilance among your users. And I will tell you is that I learned this early in it was part of my security career, and something that hasn't changed since, is that our end users truly are our worst enemies. And it's not to say that makes them bad. I mean, we all want to trust our people. But security is inversely proportional to functionality or ease of use. And as end users, myself included, whenever there is a control put in place to limit activity, it also limits functionality or performance, which we typically will find a way around. So we need to constantly reinforce among our users the importance of maintaining vigilance. So let's talk for a few minutes about best practices. Things that will help mitigate ransomware exposure. Strong, complex passwords, not just mixed alphanumerics and longer strings, but also that they are changed on a fairly regular basis. A good practice is to change passwords on a quarterly basis, and of course, letting end users know that they shouldn't use one password across all of their various work and internet accounts. Eliminating most local administrative rights. It's one of the things that, at least with Windows, administrative privileges are shut off by default. But but we really should be locking down our systems and ensuring that our end users, or at least the machine, doesn't have administrative rights, so that ransomware can, or hackers can, install unauthorized applications. have a sound and continuous patch management strategy. An amazing statistic, if you haven't seen it, the Verizon Security Breach Report last year reported that 90% of all breaches were a result of unpatched vulnerabilities dating back to 2002. So it should signal the importance of having a system and the mechanisms in place to be able to keep up with those vulnerabilities and being able to patch them. Enabling anti-exploit features on your hosts, making sure that they do not have, or minimizing the opportunity for them to be compromised or having malware be able to compromise them. Tagging all the emails, and particularly as they're coming in, making sure that you are able to tag emails as legitimate or illegitimate or suspicious, and quarantining suspicious emails for inspection. Yes, it does cause a delay in delivery if there is a false positive, but it's better to have a few false positives than to have one really bad compromise. Disabling the auto-run features, this is also something that typically does come shut off by default within Windows, but can get turned on during a configuration and imaging process. You really want to make sure that there has to be some confirmation action before an application can install and also and execute. And have an incident response plan. As a business operating on the internet, you must have some procedure documented so that people know their roles and responsibilities, what they are supposed to do and when they're supposed to do it in the event of a security incident. Developing the ransomware protection plan is that this is something that every organization should be thinking about. It's not a technology issue. It is about raising user awareness, letting them know that this is a problem, that this is a threat to your business, and really put it down to brass tacks for them. It may also be a threat to their livelihood, because if ransomware does its job and does it effectively, it will put people out of work. Doing continual assessments of your security posture, measuring effectiveness, not just in terms of how much you're stopping at the perimeter, how much malware or how many intrusions you're keeping off the network or out of your endpoints, but also measuring the responsiveness to your service level agreements. What it is, how fast and how well do you respond to incidents, and how well do you adhere to your policies. Through these assessments and through these measures, you're able to close security gaps and improve the posture of your security, of your overall organizational security. And then you're also able to provide better support. As part of our work with Carbonite, we've actually developed a checklist for you. And there are some things that we do say. This is a combination of policy, process, and technology. In fact, I often talk when it comes to security, what is it that makes you effective at keeping your organization secure? It comes down to the 4 P's of security, which is policy, process, people, and product. And product, is often the last consideration. No technology in the world is going to help you prevent a security breach if you don't have a policy, you don't have a process for reacting, and you don't have people that are trained and ready to react. The product or the technology is the tools to make those other 3 things work effectively and efficiently. So what we advise is that develop, have a professional professional grade data backup and recovery plan for all your critical information. Test your business continuity and disaster recovery. You want to make sure that that the processes you put in place work and they work the way you need them to. Use application whitelisting to prevent unauthorized applications from running. Keep, what we just talked about in terms of patch management. Have a patch management system and a policy for how often and how do you test and roll out new patches. Restrict your users' ability, particularly deny them administrative access so that they are not installing unauthorized and risky software. Disable macros and email attachments. It's still amazing that macro executables and macro viruses are still a thing that affect our systems. Train our users to avoid simple things like clicking on links, that embedded links, or opening attachments, and have a policy ready for in the event that you have a ransomware a ransomware infection so that you know what to do and you can make intelligent decisions on what comes next. Now, again, if all else fails, all of your security controls fail, your policies fail, then you go back to what that safety net is. You have Carbonite and your backup systems to recover those both critical and routine files to ensure that you have normal business operations. Now, a lot of this takes expert skill and advice. One of the things is that, Ethan said at the top of the call, is that Carbonite has more than 8,000 trained professional partners in the market that are there not just to sell you the Carbonite service and help you with their appliances, their eVault appliances, but they're also there to help you with the development of your disaster recovery plans, with the creation and optimization of your security policies, to test your controls with you and provide you the support you need. And we do say is that nobody should go alone on security. Security is a collaborative process. It is not something to be left to the neophytes and novices. If you need support, if you have questions, if you need to augment your resources, we'd highly recommend that you engage with Carbonite partners because they truly are the experts in how to pull all this together and make it work for you. So I know we have a lot of information, but before that we've thrown out here over the last 20 minutes or so. But before we go to our Q&A, I'd like to bring on Matt Mendonza to talk about how Carbonite and eVault brings us to the next level. So with that, Matt.
Thanks very much, Larry. Appreciate it. So hello, everyone. My name is Matt Mendonza. I'm the Principal Product Manager here at Carbonite, focused on all our business products. So I'm the lead for Carbonite Business. I've got about 15 years of industry experience, from small customers all the way up to the Fortune 100. So a lot of experience in dealing with these types of issues across different size organizations. And if we go to the next slide. So, where do we come in? It's really that you always need that last layer of security. It starts with educating your users, and it starts with antivirus software, and it starts with making sure you have admin credentials and all of those things that Larry was talking about. But at some point, things happen, and we still see a large number of issues with ransomware. Carbonite has just recently restored our 10,000th customer from ransomware. So that kind of gives you an idea of the scope of this problem, that we've had 10,000 ransomware recoveries from the Carbonite data center. So it's pretty impressive. And like I said, when there's nowhere to go for help, we can always go back with Carbonite. I think we might have skipped one in there. There we are. So what do we offer? We offer a wide range of solutions, but we have both cloud and hybrid backup solutions. So whether you want to go directly to the cloud and just have no additional infrastructure on site, if you don't really have extra storage or you don't want to run a local server, or if you want that speed of recovery that a hybrid solution with local storage offers, we can offer that as well. All of our products are really easy to deploy. From Carbonite, we've always grown into business from our consumer roots, and so we try to make everything as easy to use as possible. We've got advanced end-to-end encryption, so that's AES 256 across the line, whether it's at rest or in flight. Your data is always secured with Carbonite. And for our eVault product, we don't keep any of those keys, so key management is 100% with our customers, and we don't even have access to any of your data. All of our file recovery can be done via the web, so whether you're in the office or you're on the beach and you need to recover a file, you can do that from anywhere in the world. And we include many different backup types, whether it's hot backup of a machine, if it's an image backup, or if you want a true full system state with bare metal restore, where you can recover an entire machine down to the OS drive onto a new piece of hardware in the event of a failure. And then the last thing that we offer is award-winning support. And I think you can't undervalue this. Our support team is just absolutely amazing. They're all based in the US. We have live support with them. They'll get on the phone with you. They'll get on a WebEx. And 7 days a week, these guys are just absolutely amazing at helping our customers get their data back. And so why this matters, like we said, things are going to happen. You're going to end up in a situation at some point where you need to recover data, whether that's ransomware or it's something as simple as someone spilling a coffee or power outage, a big storm. These things still happen even outside of the ransomware issue we've been talking about. And so we want to offer that comprehensive backup, a full way to recover all your data. We'll have relevant RPOs, so the latest data will be kept locally if you have a hybrid product, and we'll be able to keep long-term retention too for those of you that are in compliant industries. We can customize those retention policies to keep the data that you want. So we can keep the most important data for 7 years, and maybe your dev and test data just for a week or two. All of that customization allows you to really tune the solution to meet the needs of your business. And then we have image backup and BMR options. And that's really for those people that want to be able to truly recover the entire machine down to the bare metal. We can take an image of an entire Windows server, the OS, the settings, the registry, and then be able to restore that to a new piece of hardware. And we also provide driver injection with that. So even if the hardware changes, we can still do a recovery for you, making sure you can always get your business back up and running. And so, we think that we have a great solution. We think that we have some, really strong values proposition to offer you guys. That when you are in trouble, when you have those failures, when there's a ransomware attack, when someone trips over the laptop cord and breaks their computer, that we think we can always help you get your data back. And so, if there's any questions now, Larry and I would be happy to take them.
Great, thanks guys. We actually had a couple of questions come in. One is a really good one that I think maybe Matt you could touch on, and certainly Larry, if you have any things to add here, feel free. But someone asked, how does Carbonite protect against ransomware that deletes backups? Veeam users have discovered that it can delete Veeam backups. How would we handle that at Carbonite, or sort out what's the best practice out there for these more advanced forms of cyber threats that are able to actually delete your backups?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the issues that you have with a local backup solution like Veeam is that it's in your network and on your network where you can actually have Veeam and the Veeam server be targeted as well. If you have a hybrid solution with Carbonite where we have data in our cloud, you have two separate environments, one that's the local environment and then one that's in our data center and in our cloud. And so in those type of scenarios, the one that you're saying where your entire environment's compromised, even if your local server was compromised and was hit by ransomware, the cloud copy that we have still has the history and still has that retention for up to 7 years, where we can get your data back for you from our cloud, and we wouldn't have been hit by that same ransomware.
Great. Thanks, Matt. And then there was another question that I think is a really good one. People are looking for recommendations, more or less, on how to conduct sort of a tabletop exercise or a cyber threat exercise, for really how to get a real-world view of how this would happen. Folks have really well thought out recovery plans, but as we all know, when an actual threat or disaster occurs, oftentimes there's a lot of nuances and things that could go wrong that aren't necessarily covered or addressed in sort of your routine DR testing. So what are some recommendations you could give for maybe an organization who's interested in going through an exercise where to make this more of a realistic thing, or make it more so that their plans are a little bit more aligned to an actual real-life cyber threat, given the fact that it's very hard to plan for these things and there's a lot of unknowns. But what are some tips that you guys might have to sort of maybe guide them through an exercise that would better prepare their organization?
So for me, as Matt, I think one of the things is to always test, and I think that's the one thing I see people not doing enough, and I would always encourage everyone to do more. Is pretend that you got a cyber attack. Pretend that a couple of your laptops have a ransomware virus on them. You can't get any of that data. Like, do a real test restore. Go to your backup provider, try to pull down that data, see how long it takes, see how difficult it is for you to actually do a recovery and a restore, and make sure that you have a good plan in place and write down what you learned from that so that you learn the lesson of how you did a restore and make sure that you can always get your data back.
Yeah, I guess the thing I would add to that is tabletop exercises, security audits, backup testing, these all sound relatively straightforward in terms of the concept of what you're doing. They're not always easy to plan and execute yourself. I would highly recommend engaging with Carbonite partners that are trained and have the resources to, and also the objectivity to come in and help you assess your current status, audit or build your plans, and then walk you through the training and these testing scenarios. And testing how often? Well, as Matt said, test as often as you can. If you're not testing twice a year, then you're not doing it right. And I think that having that third party come in and build, guide, and facilitate those exercises and that training is critical to making sure that you have a well thought out and functional disaster recovery plan.
Great. Those are both great answers. We have two more really good questions, and I know we're sort of bumping up against our time frame here, so I want to make sure we get these in. One question that a user asked, which I think is really good, is how can we ensure that an enterprise makes sure its data is clean? So obviously it's great when you have superior capability to protect data, but if you're passing data that has malware and ransomware on it, you're more or less in the same situation you were in when you started. I mean, what's the best practice to kind of ensure that you can get to a point prior to that malware or ransomware, and how do you really recover from that point? And sort of how does Carbonite help make that easy?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple things that we do that help with that. One is we have great reporting. And one of the things you'll always see when you get hit with a ransomware attack is that your backup sizes look a lot bigger all of a sudden because it's backing up all this uncompressible, encrypted data. So, in your report, you'll usually see a big spike in backup size, and that's one thing that you can see and call out to say, oh, that maybe I should test this backup. The other thing with the remote file access is that you can always go into a backup from anywhere in the world from our web interface and check a file, right? Make sure that your backups are working, do those sanity checks, and make that part of your monthly DR testing that you do. And then just from a technology standpoint, we keep long-term data retention. So if you want long-term data retention, well, we have copies of all your data, for years on end. We can keep all those copies, so you always have enough history to roll back to a place where data was clean.
Excellent. And this is another question that came in as part of testing DR. Can Carbonite spin up a BMR to ensure it is fully recoverable? What types of testing does Carbonite provide to test BMR images to ensure they worked?
Yeah, so we do offer a fully managed service, a cloud disaster recovery service with Carbonite, that's under the eVault brand. And this is a fully managed DR service where we'll do testing for you, we can handle failover, we'll help you write backup plans and recovery plans. And so if you're interested in that more high-touch managed service, we can provide full DR testing for you.
Excellent. Okay, and that looks to be it for questions. So I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. Just to follow up with a few more housekeeping items, this presentation, the slide deck, the recording of the presentation, as well as a complimentary white paper that we did with the 2112 group on ransomware will all be sent to attendees via email for following the webinar. So everyone will get a copy of the presentation as well as the recording, along with that sort of supplemental guide, which you can also find in the handout section of your toolbar if you'd like to just grab it now. And then, without further ado, I would just like to, once again thank Mr. Larry Walsh from 2112 Group for joining us and providing us some great tips on ransomware recovery and protection, and also Matt Mendonza for, talking about Carbonite and how we can help some of these folks recover from this unfortunate event.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And have a great day. Thanks for World Backup Day.